Royal Guard raids Camilla's closet, discovers the Queen's long-lost coronation gown. Emotional tale. The royal palace had always been a place of grandeur and mystery, with its towering spires and long, echoing corridors that seemed to carry whispers from the past. Every corner of the palace spoke of history, of triumphs and tragedies, of celebrations and sorrows that had unfolded within its walls over centuries. The guards patrolled with unwavering discipline, their eyes sharp, their steps silent, but even they could not always predict what secrets the palace held. Captain Elias was one such guard, a man whose loyalty to the crown was known by everyone in the palace. He had spent his entire adult life serving the royal family, walking the same marble floors, standing in the same shadowed corridors, and keeping watch over the same grand halls. His dedication was unmatched, and his reputation as both a protector and a discreet observer had earned him the trust of the highest members of the court. Elias had seen celebrations, witnessed arguments, and even observed moments of quiet solitude in the lives of royals, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to uncover. It all began on a crisp morning when the palace seemed unusually still. The usual bustle of maids, servants, and officials was present, but there was an underlying tension in the air that Elias could feel as soon as he stepped out of his quarters. Whispers traveled along the corridors like an invisible current, soft and fleeting, almost as if they were afraid to be heard. At first, Elias thought it might be the usual gossip about the Queen's elaborate plans for an upcoming event or the endless rumors about palace politics. But there was something different this time, a sense of urgency, a thread of curiosity that seemed to hum in the air. Elias had been on the palace grounds for decades, and he had learned to notice the subtleties in behavior and conversation. A servant brushing past him too quickly, a footstep that lingered too long outside a door, a glance exchanged between staff members, all these things could hint at something hidden, something meant to remain secret. And in recent days, those subtle signs had multiplied. Servants spoke in hushed tones and avoided eye contact. Staff members were caught stealing glances toward certain chambers, and even the usual decorum seemed tinged with unease. It was unusual, and Elias, with his keen instincts, could not ignore it. One afternoon, as he walked past the grand drawing room, he overheard a conversation between two of the junior staff. "I heard the Queen is hiding something," whispered one, glancing nervously around. "SHH, you'll get us all in trouble," replied the other, eyes wide with fear. "They say it's something from the old days, something important." Elias stopped in his tracks. His heart did not race with excitement, but with cautious curiosity. Rumors of this nature were dangerous in the palace. Even a small misunderstanding could cause chaos, yet he could not simply walk away. Something in those words felt weighty, almost tangible, like a secret that had been buried for years, waiting for someone to uncover it. The palace had many chambers, each with its own purpose and significance. Some were grand and public, designed for ceremonies and audiences, while others were private, meant only for the royal family. Queen Camilla's chambers were among the most private. Only a handful of people were allowed entry, and even fewer were trusted enough to know the details of her personal belongings. Her suite was a mixture of elegance and warmth, with rich tapestries, polished wooden floors, and sunlight spilling through large, arched windows. Yet within this beauty, there was also an air of secrecy. Certain doors were permanently locked, drawers labeled with gold letters remained untouched, and closets were carefully guarded. Captain Elias knew that approaching these areas required more than authority. It required sensitivity and discretion. The Queen was respected and loved by many, not just for her position, but for her compassion and quiet strength. She had endured hardships, both public and private, that were known only to a few. And yet, there was a lingering question that now consumed Elias' thoughts. What could be hidden in her private quarters that was causing such ripples of curiosity and fear among the staff? Days passed, and the whispers grew louder. The palace seemed to hum with quiet anticipation, as if everyone was waiting for a revelation that only the right person could uncover. Elias began his observations in earnest, walking the halls at different times, noting who came and went, and listening with careful attention. He observed the subtle nervousness of the maids as they passed her chamber, the way the butlers would pause before entering the corridors near her suite, and the fleeting glances exchanged by those who had served the queen for decades. There was clearly something being kept secret, something that demanded respect, but also carried the weight of curiosity. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the palace walls with a golden hue, Elias found himself standing outside the queen's closet, a space he had passed countless times without thought. The doors were large, made of dark oak and polished to a mirror-like shine. Brass handles gleamed faintly in the evening light, and a subtle aura of importance seemed to radiate from the space. He knew that inside was not just clothing, but a glimpse into the queen's private world, her memories, her joys, and perhaps her sorrows. It was a place strictly off-limits, yet Elias felt a compelling urge. It was not greed or mischief that drove him, but a profound sense of duty and curiosity. He wanted to understand, not to intrude, to honor the trust that had been placed in him. Slowly, almost reverently, he approached the doors. As he rested his hand on the cool brass handle, he paused, considering the weight of what he might find. Every instinct told him that this was more than a simple closet. It was a vault of history, emotion, and perhaps even secrets long thought lost. The night grew darker, and the corridors of the palace became quieter. The soft flicker of candlelight cast shadows that danced along the walls, adding a sense of mystery to the already tense atmosphere. Elias drew a deep breath, steadied his nerves, and carefully pushed open the door. The hinges creaked softly, but the sound felt loud in the silence, as if announcing his presence to the room. Inside, the closet was more magnificent than he had imagined. Rows of garments hung neatly, some adorned with embroidery, others with intricate beadwork. The fabrics shimmered in the candlelight, and the scent of lavender and aged silk filled the air. Elias moved slowly, his eyes scanning each item with care. Nothing seemed out of place at first, just the expected elegance of a queen's wardrobe. But as he continued deeper into the closet, something caught his eye, a faint glimmer behind a heavy velvet drape. Curiosity surged, but he moved with caution. The drape fell away to reveal a gown unlike any he had ever seen. Its fabric shimmered softly, a delicate mix of gold and silver threads, and intricate patterns of flowers and vines seemed to dance across its surface. Elias' breath caught in his throat. He knew immediately that this was not just a dress. This was something special, something historical, something profoundly important. He took a careful step closer, trying to absorb every detail. It was at that moment that the gravity of the discovery struck him. This was more than a piece of clothing. It was a story, a memory, a piece of the queen's life hidden from the world. Captain Elias realized that he was not just standing before a gown, but before a fragment of history, a secret kept safe for decades, perhaps for a lifetime. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders. Whatever lay in this closet had to be treated with reverence, with care, and with respect. As he stood there, gazing at the shimmering fabric, Elias felt a mixture of emotions, wonder, awe, and a deep sense of duty. He understood that what he had stumbled upon was not merely an object of beauty, but a symbol of love, resilience, and the private life of a queen who had carried the burdens of her role with grace. In that quiet, candle-lit room, the corridors of history seemed to whisper to him, urging him to tread carefully, to honor the secret, and to prepare for the story that was waiting to unfold. Little did Elias know, the discovery he had made would not only reveal the queen's hidden past, but also lead him on a journey of understanding, empathy, and emotional connection that would forever change the way he viewed his duty, the crown, and the remarkable woman who wore it. Captain Elias stood frozen for a long moment, his eyes tracing the delicate patterns of the gown. It seemed almost alive, shimmering faintly as if it held the memories of the many hands that had touched it, the ceremonies it had witnessed, and the stories it had silently kept over the years. He took a careful step closer, feeling both awe and caution. The gown was unlike anything he had seen in all his years at the palace, a rare blend of artistry, history, and something deeply personal. He reached out, his fingers trembling slightly, hovering over the embroidered fabric. It was not just silk. It carried a weight of time, of memory, of significance. The gold and silver threads formed intricate vines, delicate blossoms, and swirling patterns that seemed almost magical in the soft light of the closet. Tiny pearls were sewn along the hem, glinting like morning dew, and he noticed that each stitch was painstakingly precise, done with care and intention. Elia's breath caught. Whoever had made this gown had poured heart and soul into it. As he ran his hand gently along the fabric, Elias wondered why it had been hidden all these years. He had seen many of the palace's treasures, jewels, tapestries, ceremonial objects, and historical artifacts, but nothing had felt as intimate, as personal as this gown. It was a piece of the queen herself, a secret part of her life that she had kept locked away from the eyes of the world, and that realization made the moment heavier. He was not merely discovering history, he was stepping into someone's private, deeply human story. His mind began to piece together the whispers he had overheard in the corridors. The rumors of hidden objects, of secrets kept from the public, of something important tucked away. It all made sense now. And yet, Elias knew better than to jump to conclusions. This gown was not something to be taken lightly. He had to understand it fully, to appreciate its importance before making any decisions. Slowly, he moved around the gown, inspecting every inch. The neckline was delicate, adorned with tiny embroidered flowers, each one slightly different from the other, as if telling a story of individuality and care. The sleeves were long and flowing, ending in lace cuffs that seemed almost ethereal. The bodice was fitted with careful precision, and the skirt flowed in layers, as if capturing the movement of time itself. Elias could imagine the queen wearing it, the way it must have hugged her frame, how it must have made her feel powerful, beautiful, and royal all at once. A sudden thought struck him. This was not just a ceremonial gown. This was a coronation gown, something that had likely seen the most important day of the queen's life. The realization sent a shiver down his spine. He knew the coronation had been decades ago, an event that had been public yet shrouded in tradition and emotion. And yet, this gown had vanished from public record long ago, leaving behind only rumors and faded photographs. Its reappearance in this closet was both astonishing and deeply moving. Elias carefully lifted the edge of the skirt and noticed a small folded piece of paper tucked into the lining. His curiosity surged, but he hesitated. He knew that opening it might reveal something personal, something the queen never intended for anyone else to see. His sense of duty warred with his curiosity. He had always believed that loyalty to the crown meant respecting boundaries, protecting secrets, and serving quietly. Yet here was a secret that called to him, urging him to uncover the truth, to understand the story behind the gown. Finally, after a long moment of contemplation, he unfolded the paper. The handwriting was delicate, almost fragile, as if the writer had poured their emotions onto the page. It was a note from the late king, addressed to Queen Camilla. He read the words silently, feeling a pang of emotion. The note spoke of love, admiration, and pride. It expressed how the king had watched her grow into her role, how he had been moved by her grace, and how he had always believed she would wear the gown with dignity and confidence. Each line carried warmth, affection, and a deep sense of connection. Elias felt tears prick his eyes. The note revealed more than just sentiment. It revealed history. The king had passed away years ago, and yet his words remained, preserved in this delicate gown. Elias understood that this was why the queen had kept it hidden. It was not just a piece of clothing. It was a symbol of love, of memory, of a bond that had transcended time. To her, it was precious beyond measure, and its discovery by anyone else could be both intrusive and heartbreaking. Elias carefully replaced the note and stepped back. He felt a surge of admiration for the queen, not for her position, not for her status, but for her courage and her ability to protect something so deeply personal. He realized that this gown was more than a historical artifact. It was a testament to her resilience, her love, and the private struggles she had endured behind the public facade. For years she had carried the weight of her role, the scrutiny of the public, and the memories of her past, all while keeping this gown safe, untouched, and hidden from view. He spent hours in the closet that night, examining the gown, studying its details and reflecting on its significance. He imagined the coronation day, the excitement, the ceremony, and the solemn vows. He pictured the queen standing in the grand hall, every eye upon her, yet carrying a personal story that no one else could see. The gown had been a part of that moment, a silent witness to history, a symbol of love and dedication that had survived decades. As the night deepened, Elias finally realized that he could not simply take the gown or report it without understanding the consequences. It was not his place to make decisions for the queen or to expose her secrets. His role as a protector required discretion, empathy, and respect. The gown was not merely a treasure to be admired. It was a piece of her life, a memory that belonged to her alone. And in that understanding, Elias felt a profound sense of responsibility. He carefully closed the drape, ensuring the gown was hidden once again. The closet seemed to sigh in relief, as if grateful that its secret would remain safe for now. Elias stepped back, taking one last look at the intricate embroidery, the delicate fabric, and the hidden note, and he felt a quiet reverence. He understood that some discoveries were not meant for the world, that some secrets were sacred, and that loyalty often meant protecting what others could not see or comprehend. Leaving the closet, Elias walked silently through the corridors of the palace. The night was calm, the moonlight spilling through the windows, casting gentle shadows along the marble floors. He felt a mixture of emotions, wonder, awe, and a deep respect for the queen. He realized that his understanding of his duty had changed. Protecting the crown was not just about guarding walls and watching for threats. It was about safeguarding the stories, the memories, and the deeply human experiences that made the royal family who they were. As he returned to his quarters, Elias could not shake the image of the gown from his mind. He thought of the late king's note, the delicate stitching, and the quiet beauty of the gown itself. It was more than an object. It was a bridge between the past and present, a connection to love, memory, and the personal sacrifices of a queen who had given so much to her people. The discovery had left a mark on him, a reminder that even in a world of duty and protocol, there was room for empathy, understanding, and emotional connection. Elias lay awake that night, replaying every detail in his mind. He thought about how the gown had survived the years, how it had been preserved despite the passage of time, and how it had remained a secret, protected by the queen herself. He felt a quiet admiration for her ability to carry such a weight without complaint, without drawing attention, and without losing her dignity. The gown was a symbol of her strength, her love, and her resilience, and Elias knew that his role was to honor that, to respect it, and to ensure that its story remained intact. By the time dawn broke, painting the palace walls with soft golden light, Elias had made a silent vow. He would protect the gown, not for fame, recognition, or reward, but because it was the right thing to do. He would safeguard the queen's secret, honor her memories, and carry the knowledge of her private history with discretion and care. And in that promise, he found a sense of peace, knowing that his duty was not just to the crown, but to the humanity and dignity that the crown represented. In the quiet hours of the morning, Captain Elias could not stop thinking about the gown. Every detail lingered in his mind. The shimmer of the fabric, the delicate embroidery, the pearls sewn along the hem, and the small note from the late king. He had seen many precious things in the palace during his long service, but nothing had ever moved him as deeply as this hidden gown. It was not merely a relic of history. It was a window into the private life of the queen, a story that had been carefully preserved for decades. The more Elias thought about it, the more he understood that this gown held secrets beyond its beauty. He began to wonder about the queen's life at the time she had worn it. What had she felt on her coronation day? Was she proud, nervous, or overwhelmed? The gown had been part of one of the most significant moments of her life, yet it had been kept hidden for so many years. Why? What had happened that made her tuck it away in secrecy, behind heavy velvet drapes, away from the eyes of the world? Curiosity mingled with a profound sense of respect. Elias knew he could not simply leave the story untold in his mind. He needed to understand it, to see it not just as a piece of fabric, but as a symbol of something much greater. And so, in the soft light of dawn, he returned to the closet. The palace was still quiet, the corridors empty except for the faint sound of his boots against the marble floors. He approached the velvet drape with a careful reverence, his heart pounding in his chest, not with fear but with the weight of discovery. Pulling back the drape, Elias looked at the gown again. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows made the gold and silver threads gleam, almost as if the gown itself were alive. He reached out and touched the fabric gently, feeling the texture beneath his fingers. Each stitch, each fold, each pearl seemed to tell a story. It was then that he noticed something he had not seen before. Small initials embroidered into the lining of the dress, almost hidden from view. They were delicate, written in an elegant script, and accompanied by a tiny crown symbol. Elias' curiosity deepened. The initials matched the late king's, and he realized that the gown had been personalized, not just as ceremonial attire, but as a private gift. It was a message of love, a token of devotion that had been meant only for the queen. The significance of this discovery made Elias pause. He was not merely looking at a gown. He was holding a piece of someone's heart, preserved in silk and gold. He carefully unfolded the skirt to examine the lining further, revealing more hidden details. There were tiny embroidered motifs, each one representing a memory, a moment, or a sentiment. A small rose for love, a tiny dove for peace, a delicate star for hope. Elias felt as though he were reading a diary, not in words but in threads. Each symbol told a story, each stitch whispered secrets that only the queen could fully understand. He realized that this gown was not meant to be admired by the public. It was a private narrative, a treasure of the heart, preserved in silence and solitude. As Elias continued his examination, he noticed faint signs of wear, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. The fabric near the bodice was slightly creased, as if it had been worn once and carefully stored afterward. There were tiny marks on the lining where the queen had likely adjusted the gown herself, preparing for the moment she would stand before her people and pledge herself to her kingdom. Elias felt a wave of emotion. This gown had carried her through one of the most important days of her life, yet she had chosen to hide it, not for secrecy alone, but perhaps to protect the memory, to keep it untouched by the world's gaze. He paused and considered the implications. The gown represented not only the coronation, but also the private grief and joy of a queen who had endured so much. Queen Camilla had faced scrutiny, pressure, and expectation, and yet she had preserved this gown as a symbol of her personal journey. The weight of her decision struck Elias profoundly. It was a reminder that history is not just made in public moments, but also in quiet, personal acts of love, remembrance, and resilience. Elia's thoughts turned to the late king again. He imagined the moment he had chosen to give the gown to the queen, perhaps with trembling hands and a heart full of hope. The note, the initials, the hidden motifs, they were all pieces of a message that transcended time. It spoke of love that endured beyond life, of devotion that could not be measured, and of a connection that remained sacred and untouchable. Elias felt humbled to be standing in the presence of such a treasure, realizing that some discoveries were not just historical but profoundly human. He lingered there for hours, moving slowly through the closet, taking in every detail. His eyes traced the delicate embroidery, the careful pleats, the layers of silk that made up the flowing skirt. He imagined the queen wearing it, feeling the weight of the moment, standing tall and proud before her people. And yet, he also imagined her in private, perhaps running her fingers over the fabric, remembering the words of the late king, recalling the promises made, the love shared, and the quiet moments of reflection that only she could know. Elias realized that this gown was not just a garment. It was a bridge between past and present, between love and duty, between memory and history. It carried the story of a queen who had given herself to her people while preserving the deepest parts of her heart. He understood in that quiet, golden-lit closet that some treasures were meant to be protected, not displayed. Some stories were meant to be felt, not spoken aloud. And some secrets were sacred, entrusted to time and the few who could be trusted to honor them. With each passing minute, Elias felt a deeper connection to the queen. He had spent years serving the crown, yet he had never truly understood the private burdens and quiet triumphs that define the life of royalty. This gown was a revelation, a reminder that behind every ceremony, every public appearance, every smiling face, there was a human story filled with emotion, courage, and love. Elias felt gratitude for the trust placed in him, even unknowingly, to witness a piece of that story. He carefully folded the skirt back into its proper place, ensuring that nothing was disturbed. He smoothed the velvet drape over the gown, protecting it once more from the world. Standing there, he made a silent vow to honor the queen's privacy, to safeguard this hidden history, and to carry the memory of the gown with respect and discretion. It was not his to share, nor was it anyone else's. It was a sacred piece of the queen's life, and Elias understood that protecting it was now part of his duty, not just as a guard, but as a witness to history and the quiet acts of love that defined it. As he left the closet, Elias felt a mix of emotions, pride, reverence, and a quiet sorrow for the loss of the late king, whose words and sentiments had been preserved so delicately in this gown. He thought about the queen, her strength, her courage, and her ability to carry both public and private responsibilities with grace. He realized that the gown was more than a memory. It was a testament to her resilience, her humanity, and the enduring power of love. Walking through the corridors of the palace, Elias felt as though he had been given a gift, not just in discovering the gown, but in understanding its significance. He knew that history often focuses on events, ceremonies, and grand gestures, but true history is also found in small, intimate moments. The quiet love of a king for his queen, the careful preservation of a memory, the private victories and struggles that shape a person's life. The gown was a living reminder of that truth. By the time he returned to his quarters, the morning sun had risen fully, casting warm light over the palace gardens. Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. His duty was no longer just about protection in the physical sense. It was about understanding, empathy, and safeguarding the stories that mattered most. The gown was more than silk and thread. It was a symbol of love, memory, and the quiet, unspoken strength of a queen who had given so much of herself to her people. Sitting quietly, Elias reflected on everything he had seen. He realized that some discoveries change the way a person sees the world. The gown had not only revealed a piece of history, but it also revealed the depth of human emotion, the sacredness of memory, and the enduring power of love that transcends time. He understood that his role was not to display or report the secret, but to protect it, to honor it, and to carry it forward with care. And in that understanding, Elias felt a sense of fulfillment that he had never known before. He thought about what lay ahead. The discovery of the gown was only the beginning. There were stories, emotions, and memories tied to it that would continue to unfold. He knew that he had a responsibility to remain vigilant, to observe, and to respect the Queen's privacy while also learning from the lessons the gown had taught him about love, history, and human resilience. The discovery had changed him, deepened his understanding of duty, and reminded him of the importance of empathy and respect in every action he took. Elias knew that he would return to the closet, not out of curiosity or desire, but out of reverence. He wanted to continue learning from the gown, to appreciate its beauty, and to honor the story it represented. The hidden coronation gown of Queen Camilla was more than a piece of history. It was a living memory, a testament to love, courage, and the quiet power of secrets kept with care. And Elias understood in that moment that some treasures are meant to be discovered not with hands or eyes alone, but with the heart. Days passed after Captain Elias' discovery of the hidden coronation gown, yet he could not escape the thoughts that occupied his mind. Every time he walked the palace corridors, the memory of the gown and the delicate note from the late king returned to him, as vivid and emotional as the day he first saw them. He had kept the secret faithfully, respecting the Queen's privacy, but the weight of that secret had begun to press upon him. It was not guilt, exactly. It was a mixture of awe, reverence, and a deep, personal sense of responsibility that he could not ignore. Elias had always been disciplined, known for his ability to carry out orders with precision and to guard both people and places with unwavering loyalty. But this was different. This was not a question of safety or security. It was a question of morality, empathy, and human respect. He was now privy to something that no one else could see or understand, a secret so deeply personal that it defined the Queen in ways the public would never know. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized that his decision on how to handle the discovery would carry consequences far beyond himself. He recalled the whispers he had overheard earlier, the rumors about hidden objects and secrets in the Queen's chambers. If word of the gown's existence reached the staff or the public, it could ignite speculation, gossip, and even scandal. The palace, with all its grandeur, had always been vulnerable to rumors, and while the gown itself was beautiful, its emotional significance made it sacred. Elias understood that revealing it, even with good intentions, could betray the Queen's trust and shatter the private memory she had worked so hard to preserve. Yet, even as he recognized the need for discretion, he felt the pull of curiosity. He wanted to share his discovery, to discuss the historical importance of the gown with someone he trusted, perhaps another senior member of the royal staff who could appreciate its significance. But he hesitated, knowing that no one could truly understand the personal story that accompanied it. It was not just history, it was emotion, memory, and private love. No matter how carefully he spoke, the risk of misunderstanding was too great. As he walked through the palace gardens one afternoon, the fresh air and blooming flowers providing a brief respite from his thoughts, Elias contemplated the Queen herself. He thought of her public persona, graceful, composed, and admired by everyone. And he thought of the private woman who had worn this gown decades ago, whose heart had carried love, loss, and the quiet weight of memory. Elias realized that the Queen had sacrificed much of her private life for the role she held. The gown was a reminder of that sacrifice, a reminder that even those who seem untouchable, admired by millions, have deeply personal stories that remain unseen. Elias knew that the emotional weight of the gown was not something he could easily set aside. Every time he considered reporting the discovery to another member of the palace staff, he felt a pang of guilt. To do so would be to expose a piece of the queen's private life to scrutiny. It would be a betrayal, no matter how noble his intentions might seem. And yet, keeping it secret alone was a heavy burden. He could not share it with anyone, not even his closest confidants, and that solitude weighed on him. He found himself visiting the closet more often, not to touch the gown, but to observe it from a respectful distance. He would enter the room, close the door quietly behind him, and simply stand there, letting the light catch the shimmer of the fabric and observing the delicate embroidery. Each visit reminded him why secrecy was necessary, yet each visit also deepened his admiration for the queen and the care with which she had preserved this private memory. The gown was a symbol of something greater than history or duty. It was a symbol of love, resilience, and the power of human memory. One evening, as the palace settled into its nightly rhythm, Elias sat alone in his quarters, the candlelight flickering against the walls. He thought deeply about his responsibility. He realized that his duty extended beyond physical protection. It also included emotional and moral judgment. He could not allow his admiration, curiosity, or sense of importance to cloud his judgment. The gown belonged to the queen alone, and it was his responsibility to protect it from exposure, exploitation, or misunderstanding. Yet the conflict within him persisted. He wondered what the public would think if the gown were revealed, a long-lost piece of royal history, glittering with gold and silver, connected to a beloved late king. Historians, journalists, and royal enthusiasts would likely celebrate the discovery, but they could never appreciate the emotional depth that made it sacred. Elias realized that the true value of the gown was not in public admiration, but in the private memory it held. The challenge, then, was to balance respect for history with respect for humanity, and to make a decision that honored both. In the following days, Elias observed the queen more closely than ever before, not in a way that intruded, but in a way that helped him understand her character, her choices, and her priorities. He noticed how she moved through the palace with a quiet dignity, how she interacted with staff and visitors with warmth and patience, and how she carried herself with a strength that seemed effortless. He began to understand why she had kept the gown hidden. It was not merely sentimentality, but a conscious act of preserving her own story, of maintaining a sacred connection to the late king, and of keeping her private memories untouched by the pressures of public life. Elias' respect for the queen deepened with each observation. He realized that the gown was a testament to her humanity, her ability to love, and her courage in navigating both personal and public life. He understood that revealing it, even with the best intentions, could diminish that humanity. It would reduce a deeply personal story to an object of curiosity, stripping away the love and memory woven into every thread. The gown's significance was not just in its beauty, but in the emotions it carried, the memories it preserved, and the trust placed in him to protect it. One evening, while the palace was quiet and the moonlight spilled across the floors, Elias made a decision. He would continue to protect the gown in secret. He would not tell anyone, no matter the temptation, because he understood that some stories are too sacred to share. The true weight of his duty was not in guarding the palace walls or the crown, but in safeguarding human emotion, memory, and love. It was a lesson in empathy, discretion, and moral responsibility, qualities that defined him not just as a guard, but as a human being. Even as he made this choice, Elias felt a profound emotional connection to the queen. He realized that she had entrusted him, in an indirect way, with something far more valuable than any treasure or artifact. She had entrusted him with a part of her life, a piece of her heart, and a story that transcended history. and he knew that honoring that trust was not simply a duty, it was a privilege, one that carried its own rewards in the form of understanding, respect, and personal growth. The conflict within him, though resolved in principle, remained in a subtler form. He still wrestled with the temptation to share the discovery, to talk about it with someone he trusted, to seek validation for the emotional impact it had on him. But each time he felt that urge, he reminded himself of the queen, her courage, and the sacred nature of the gown. He thought of the late king's note, the delicate embroidery, and the hidden symbols, and he understood that the gown was not meant for the world. It was meant to be preserved in quiet reverence, protected by those who understood its true value. Elias also reflected on the lessons he had learned from this experience. He realized that true duty is more than following orders or guarding physical objects. It is about understanding the deeper meaning of responsibility, respecting privacy, and recognizing the emotional weight carried by those we serve. The discovery of the gown had challenged him in ways he had never anticipated, forcing him to confront questions of morality, empathy, and personal integrity. And in facing those questions, he had grown, becoming not just a better guard, but a more thoughtful and compassionate human being. The palace, with all its grandeur and history, had always been a place of secrets, but Elias now understood that the most important secrets were not political intrigues or treasures, but the private stories of love, loss, and memory that shaped the people who lived there. Queen Camilla's hidden gown was one such story, a story that transcended time, connecting the past to the present, the late king to the queen, and the human heart to the responsibilities of those who served it. As he walked through the corridors that night, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. He understood that his role was not only to protect the palace and the crown, but also to preserve the dignity, privacy, and humanity of the queen. The gown had become a symbol of that purpose, a constant reminder of the delicate balance between duty, empathy, and moral responsibility. And he knew, without a doubt, that he would honor that balance for as long as he served, protecting the queen's secret with unwavering loyalty and respect. For Elias, the discovery had been more than a moment of intrigue or curiosity. It had been a journey into understanding, compassion, and moral clarity. He had learned that some treasures are too precious for the world to see, that some stories are too sacred to share, and that true loyalty is measured not only in service, but in the respect, discretion, and empathy we show to those we protect. And so, as the night deepened and the palace settled into silence, Elias stood quietly in his quarters, reflecting on the hidden gown, the late king's note, and the enduring love that had been preserved in silk and gold. He felt a sense of peace, knowing that he had made the right choice, and a deep, unspoken connection to the queen, whose courage and humanity had forever changed the way he viewed duty, history, and the sacredness of private memory. The palace had grown quiet once again, but this time the silence felt different. It was not the tense, anticipatory hush of secrets waiting to be uncovered, nor the restless quiet that followed intrigue. It was a gentle, calm stillness that allowed the heart to notice things often overlooked: the way sunlight pooled on polished floors, the soft hum of the evening wind through the tall windows, and the faint, comforting scent of lavender that always seemed to linger near Queen Camilla's chambers. Captain Elias moved carefully through the corridors, his footsteps measured, thoughtful, as though the palace itself could sense his reverence. Since his discovery of the gown and the moral conflict that followed, Elias had been more observant than ever. Every interaction with the queen, every glance exchanged with the palace staff, and every moment spent in her presence carried new meaning. He had come to realize that his role as a protector went far beyond guarding doors, watching for danger, and performing duties dictated by orders. His true responsibility was now intertwined with empathy, understanding, and an appreciation for the deeply personal stories that gave life to the palace and its history. One morning, as he was patrolling the royal gardens, Elias noticed Queen Camilla seated quietly on a stone bench, the sun warming her face. She appeared to be lost in thought, her gaze distant yet serene. Something about the moment drew Elias to pause. He did not want to disturb her, yet he felt compelled to remain nearby, a silent presence. The queen had always carried herself with dignity and grace, but today there was a subtle vulnerability, a softness in her posture that suggested she, too, carried memories that weighed upon her heart. Elias approached slowly and bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty," he said softly, careful not to break the peace of the morning. Queen Camilla looked up, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment there was a pause, a quiet acknowledgement that needed no words. She smiled faintly, a gentle curve of lips that carried warmth and unspoken gratitude. "Good morning, Elias," she said, her voice calm, yet filled with a depth of feeling that he had not heard before. He nodded, unsure whether he should speak or simply remain as a witness to the moment. The queen's gaze lingered on him, her eyes thoughtful, as though she sensed something beyond his outward actions. After a long pause, she spoke again, her voice softer this time. "I know that some things in this palace remain hidden, not out of secrecy, but out of love, memory, and respect for the past." Elias' heart quickened, but he remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "I have always believed," she said, "that certain treasures should be preserved, not displayed. They belong not to the world but to the people who carry their meaning in their hearts. Some memories are too sacred for public eyes, and some stories are too personal to be shared." She looked directly at him, her gaze steady and kind. "I trust that those who serve me understand this. I trust those who protect this palace, not only with their vigilance but with their hearts." Elias felt a wave of emotion rise within him. He realized in that moment that the queen was speaking not just of the palace, but of him, of the secret he had discovered, and the respect he had shown. His years of silent service, his careful observation, and his moral restraint had not gone unnoticed. Though she did not explicitly mention the gown, he knew she acknowledged his loyalty, his discretion, and his empathy. It was a recognition deeper than words could convey. The queen rose from the bench, moving with quiet elegance, and Elias instinctively stepped back, giving her space. She paused and turned to him once more. "Elias, some things are entrusted to us not because we asked for them, but because we are capable of understanding their weight. You have carried that responsibility well." Her eyes softened, and she placed a delicate hand over her heart. "Thank you." Elias bowed, struggling to find words. "Your Majesty, it is my honor," he said finally, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling within him. "I will always protect what you consider precious, not because it is my duty alone, but because it deserves respect." The queen smiled, a quiet, radiant smile that seemed to illuminate the entire garden. "Then you understand," she said, "that some treasures are meant to be cherished quietly, not paraded for admiration. They are the keepers of memory, the guardians of love, and the symbols of our humanity." Elias nodded again, feeling a profound connection to her words. In that moment, he understood the true meaning of loyalty and service. It was not measured in outward displays of power or adherence to orders. It was measured in empathy, understanding, and the willingness to protect what is sacred, even when no one else knows it exists. The days that followed carried a subtle shift in the palace. Elias continued his duties with the same precision and vigilance as always, but now there was a new layer of meaning to his work. He moved with purpose, not only as a guard of the crown, but as a protector of memory and emotion. He understood that his presence, his discretion, and his moral judgment were as important as the physical security of the palace. The gown, though hidden, became a symbol of this deeper understanding, a reminder that some stories and treasures carry significance far beyond their appearance. One evening, as the palace settled into the calm of twilight, Elias found himself once again near the queen's chambers. The doors were closed, but the warm glow of candlelight spilled through the windows. He paused, feeling the weight of his silent responsibility. He knew the gown remained safely hidden, preserved exactly as it had been for decades. The queen's memory, her private connection to the late king, and the sacred story carried by the gown were all intact. Elias felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had honored their trust. As he walked away, he reflected on how much he had grown through this experience. The gown had been a catalyst for understanding, teaching him about love, loyalty, and the profound power of secrecy. It had reminded him that history is not just a collection of events, dates, and objects, but also a tapestry of human emotion, memory, and connection. Some moments, some treasures, and some stories are meant to be preserved quietly, to be understood by those who have the wisdom and empathy to honor them. In the quiet of the night, Elias returned to his quarters, the palace silent except for the distant call of a nightingale. He sat by the window, gazing at the moonlit gardens, thinking of the queen and the hidden gown. He imagined her standing on the coronation day, graceful and poised, yet carrying the private love and memory that the gown represented. He pictured her smiling, perhaps remembering the words of the late king, feeling the comfort of his memory woven into every stitch. It was a vision that filled him with both peace and reverence. Over time, the story of the gown remained a secret known only to him and the queen. Yet its presence influenced Elias in subtle ways. He approached every task with renewed care, observed every detail with greater attention, and treated every interaction with empathy and respect. He knew that the smallest actions could preserve or break trust, and that the most meaningful moments often went unseen. The gown had taught him a lesson in humility, patience, and the enduring value of protecting what is sacred. One afternoon, as he assisted the queen with preparations for a private event, she looked at him and spoke softly. "Elias, the world sees the crown, the palace, and the ceremonies, but it rarely sees the hearts behind them. You have understood that, and for that I am grateful." Her eyes shone with quiet appreciation. "You carry more than duty, you carry understanding, and that is rare." Elias bowed, humbled. "Your Majesty, I only do what is right," he replied. "I respect what is yours, and I will continue to do so." The queen nodded, a gentle smile forming. "Then our trust is secure," she said, "and that is worth more than any treasure or artifact." In the days and months that followed, life in the palace continued as always. The coronation gown remained hidden, a secret preserved behind velvet drapes, untouched by public eyes. Yet its presence was felt in the quiet, in the careful actions of those who served, and in the deep respect that Elias carried in his heart. It became a symbol of love, memory, and the human connection that defines both royalty and those who serve it. Elias often returned to the closet, not to handle the gown, but to observe it from a distance, to reflect on the lessons it had taught him, and to honor the trust placed in him. Each visit reinforced his understanding that some discoveries are not meant for fame or recognition, but for the quiet enrichment of the heart. The gown was more than silk and thread. It was a testament to love, resilience, and the sacred power of memory. And so, in the peaceful halls of the palace, under the watchful eyes of Captain Elias, the hidden coronation gown remained safe. It was a treasure not of gold or jewels, but of human emotion, memory, and the quiet understanding that some things are too precious for the world to see. The gown's story was preserved not for display, but for the hearts of those who could truly understand its meaning. And in that preservation, both the queen and Elias found a quiet joy, a connection that transcended time, a bond built on trust, respect, and the enduring power of love. The palace continued to flourish, but its most important treasures remained invisible to the public, hidden not out of fear or secrecy, but out of reverence and understanding. And Captain Elias, who had discovered the hidden gown, carried that understanding with him in every step he took, every door he guarded, and every heart he encountered. In protecting the Queen's secret, he had discovered a deeper truth about duty, empathy, and the quiet strength of the human heart.